Let's go! DeMARIO Tolan film study along with some of your mailbag questions. So obviously you see DeMARIO Tolan just making so many good plays. I really like a few things. The first thing is obviously him being out in space guarding a slot wide receiver. And this is something that a lot of you have said to me, that you love seeing that DeMARIO Tolan is good in coverage as well as reading the run. And it could just be that he's wearing that number 8 uniform. But he does remind me of Patrick Queen in a lot of different ways. Just an elite athlete, a guy who loves to get downfield. This right here is a very Patrick Queen type of play. He was really good at making these types of tackles through the C gap, reading this play early, and then just chasing it down. He's just a really good player. And you see him here in space, timing this blitz, and he fights off a block. Good stuff here. And it's amazing. Now, here's something else that I really like about DeMARIO Tolan if he decides to actually end up signing with LSU, and if the LSU defense remains the same next season scheme-wise. A lot of high schools run 3-man fronts. And as you see here, this is a 4-man front. So if this 4-3 defense is something that's going to stick at LSU for the foreseeable future, a lot of linebackers play behind 3-3 stacks, or they play a 3-3-5 stack in high school. But this is obviously, something that's really good for DeMARIO Tolan, especially if you need him to play in year one. And I understand that he's not some elite recruit, but the key thing here is when you get a fast, speedy linebacker like this, you do get a little extra value compared to maybe an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman, because he could play on special teams. And a good example of this is Josh White, who, while he's yet to really play at LSU, he was a special teamer last season, and those reps are valuable to keep your starters off of special teams. And obviously, you just see him making play after play after play. So now let's get into some of your mailbag questions as we continue to play some DeMARIO Tolan clips. I'm trying to figure out, so he caught this ball flush off the kick. This is insane. Okay, I've watched this a few times. So he goes straight through the A gap and he caught it. Can you not return an extra point for 2 points? So this is from Lawrence, okay? It's hard to have confidence in Blake Baker after his abysmal stretch at Miami. Granted, I know he's a linebacker coach for LSU now, but if you look back at Miami's defense from last year, the linebackers were almost always out of position. Still, he seems to be one of the best recruiters at LSU on the defensive side of the ball. What's your confidence level in Blake Baker? We'll go ahead and continue running this DeMARIO Tolan film in the background, and eventually you'll see him playing some offense as he is right here, carrying this football and catching the football to the outside. So the first thing here is, 2 years ago, Blake Baker had one of the best defenses in college football as the defensive coordinator. However, a lot of things change. So, this depends on how you view the 2020 season. Some of you look at the 2020 season, especially in an LSU lens, that it was illegitimate all the way around because of the pandemic and the schedules were so different. And I totally get that line of thinking. So the first thing is, every single coach has some kind of excuse baked in, and it's a rather legitimate excuse regarding the pandemic. So, that really hurts your defensive install and so many other things. So, I'll defend Blake Baker on that. He also had a lot of talent, even though Miami's defense in particular struggled. And it was interesting looking at Blake Baker's defenses at Miami. They were good against bad opposition, and they were really bad whenever they faced a formidable offense, which is what you're basically going to be seeing every week in the SEC this next season. And the thing is Blake Baker, of course, was Miami's defensive coordinator last season. But there is another side to the story, Manny Diaz is also Miami's head coach. And you have to factor in that maybe, and just maybe, Miami had Manny Diaz step on the toes of Blake Baker far too often. And that can happen, especially when the head coach is a defensive head coach. Now, Ed Orgeron is actually really good at this. He lets his assistant coaches do all the coaching as far as the X's and O's are concerned, even though I thought he probably should have stepped in a little bit more last season with Bo Pelini, but that's who he is. Some head coaches are not like that, and there was rumors that Manny Diaz just started to take things over, which as a defensive coordinator, especially if it's a head coach stepping on your toes, that becomes an issue over who's actually calling the plays, whose philosophy is it. And even if your defensive coordinator is still calling the plays, knowing that the head coach is trying to step in can mess with you cognitively. So, yes, Blake Baker's Miami defense last season was very sporadic. But I do defend him because the year before they were honestly really good. And last season, obviously, De'Aaron King made Miami a better team, but defensively, they fell off a cliff despite having a few really good NFL prospects on there. Also, Blake Baker is not the defensive coordinator at LSU. He is the linebackers coach. And I do think it is interesting that he's coming over to be the linebackers coach. And at the same time, even though he has more coordinator experience, he's also, of course, the guy that's not actually going to be the coordinator. That's going to be Durante Jones. So it is an interesting balance considering the guy who is becoming the LSU defensive coordinator has never been a defensive coordinator at the Power 5 level. And Blake Baker, who is also relatively young, like Durante Jones, has been a defensive coordinator at the Power 5 level at multiple universities. One, of course, at Miami and then Louisiana Tech, even though they're not Power 5. They're still reputable universities. We also had a comment about Andre Carter. My thoughts on him. Obviously, I think he's really good. He was a great player. I remember his playing days, and come on, his name's Carter, and he's a defensive lineman. My favorite position, my favorite name. You gotta love it. But yeah, Andre Carter's going to be great at LSU. He really is, and he's going to have to be because, as we brought up during Film Study Week, and for those that haven't seen it, go check out our 3 film studies from earlier this week. You can easily see that you really need an elite defensive line to run a 4-3. Whereas in a 3-4, defensive linemen's jobs are still very difficult. I've gotten a lot of messages this week about you guys having a deeper appreciation for Rashard Lawrence, and I like hearing that. But in a 3-4, your job as a defensive lineman isn't so much, to make tackles and make plays. It's to clog up gaps and open up your linebackers to make plays, while at the same time, you're helping out, or you're trying yourself to get some penetration and making some tackles as well. So, in the 4-3, you're trusting your defensive tackles to, be the Glenn Dorseys and the Chad Lavallées to make tackles on their own, make sacks and all of that. So, yes, Andre Carter's got a tough task ahead of him, and we'll see what happens. So, before we get out of here, I was getting ready to post this film study, but Saahdiq Charles said, look, I'm going to post an explosive tweet and then delete it about a minute later, but it was kind of refreshing to hear some honesty about this entire situation. Since nobody want to say it, I will. If you smoke, I blurted out here because I understand how some people can get about this. Do not go to LSU. It will be blown out of proportion and used against you compared to how a lot of other programs handle that. Here's Brody Miller. It's interesting that Brody Miller, and I love Brody Miller as a reporter, he said, a week after Dare Rosenthal leaves LSU for similar issues, okay, Saahdiq Charles comes out with a strong statement against his alma mater's drug policy. Now, we're going to talk more about this on the live stream on Saturday night because I feel like a live stream discussion is better. for serious matters, stuff off the field. I've always said that because it's a free-flowing conversation where I'm hearing your viewpoints and all of that. The bottom line is, number one, this tweet is good. I wish Saahdiq Charles would have left it up because this does apply some pressure because other teams are taking advantage of it. Guess what? We're going to be going up against Dare Rosenthal this year. He's going to be playing for Kentucky, and they're on the schedule. And if Saahdiq Charles is right about this, if the standard for this action is taken so much more seriously at LSU compared to other schools, it is a competitive disadvantage for your school with something that is now widely more accepted in America now more than it's ever been. So, yeah, I mean, I'm glad this happened. So, once again, I'll save further discussion on this in the live stream on Saturday night. And that's the bottom line. It doesn't really matter how you actually feel about this thing. It's honestly, that doesn't really matter here. In America, this is more widely accepted, and other programs are taking advantage of it, and LSU is still stuck in the past about it. And it's just the truth. So, yeah, it's good to hear some truth and some clarity regarding this situation because, of course, Saahdiq Charles was suspended for violation of team rules in 2019 for 6 games. He played 9 of them, but 6 of them he was suspended for violation of team rules. And to Saahdiq's credit, he took full responsibility and said what he did was a stupid mistake. If this was what happened to him as well, I'm guessing it is, especially if he's so passionate about it. He plays the same position as Dare Rosenthal. They were on the team together, obviously in 2019 and 2018. So, yeah, it just stinks all around. We are at a huge competitive disadvantage this season. At least with Saahdiq Charles, we had Joe Burrow and that great offense, and they were still able to win without Saahdiq. With Dare Rosenthal, yes, LSU can win without him, especially with Cam Wire, who's super talented, but it's going to be really hard. It really is, because the offensive line depth, as many of you know, is not where it needs to be, especially as a first-year offensive line coach gets his new footing. But, I have faith in Brad Davis and Ed Orgeron figuring out the answer there. I hope you enjoyed this video today. Obviously, let me know your thoughts on today's DeMARIO TOLAN film study, and we'll see you Saturday night. Of course, it is Power Hour LSU. Boom! Oh, yeah, we are doing Detroit-style pizza tonight. Let's go!